Hello, can you hear me? You guys can hear me? Let me know if let me know if you can hear me on this one right here. Just adjusting the volume on this one. Yes, I can hear you. Okay, perfect. All right. All right, y'all. So a little bit of an unorthodox what do you call it? A bit of an unorthodox preview day, right? I am at Monarchy, just trying to get some what do you call it? Car services done and whatnot. So I figured, did you see Jake's weigh-in? I did, and we're gonna talk about that extensively. By the way, uh, Jake Paul looks significantly smaller than Anthony Joshua, right? And he mentioned something about Anthony Joshua having chicken legs or something to that degree, but I don't know. I don't know if that really holds any weight, to be quite honest with you, right? Because look, I think a lot of fighters really need to stop with the body shaming. Now, obviously, Joshua is not the guy that you necessarily want to body shame to any degree, right? Yeah, way smaller, almost chubby at 216. Uh, you know what? He didn't look chubby. I wouldn't say he's chubby at 216, right? I would say that what you see out of Jake Paul is a very puffed up version of somebody that is 6 feet one, right? Now Jake Paul and I are very similar in like body stature, right? He is a little bit taller than me. Um, yeah, 216. That's probably if I really like went all out at a buffet and not really cared about weight or this and that, yeah, that's where I would get up to, like right around 216 or so, right? uh I think he's a little too bulky for that size, right? uh I would feel more comfortable at most, right, either around 200 or at least 190 or a little under 200. That's where I would feel my most comfortable at, right? I would feel my most comfortable in that, right? As a 6 feet tall man, right? Jake Paul being 6'1", right? That is where I think the best comfortability is at that weight without. And you know what? Here's the thing about Jake Paul, right? He's not in his whole entire fight career, he never really cut a lot of weight, right? Not for the Nate Robinson fight. I don't know how much he weighed in for that one. That probably didn't have a weight limit. Uh, the Anderson Silva fight, there was a weight limit that was around the weight that he was at. What else? The Mike Perry fight, there was a weight limit clause, but Mike Perry literally had to bulk himself up just to be on Jake's level. So yeah, I don't think that's the most effective size for Jake Paul. And here's another thing, right? I honestly think that the 245 weight for Anthony Joshua, he came in a little under 243. That's good for him. That is the homeostasis of the weight, uh, the weight that he needs to be at, right? The same thing that I just mentioned to you. I feel my lightest and my best when I'm walking around 190, just right around a 200 or a little under 200. That's where I feel my best at, is when I'm at least that light. Now, with uh, with Anthony Joshua, there's really not a lot of evidence to show that he does great in that weight class. Although you can say that he was at that weight during the Usyk fight. Now, look, here's the interesting thing about Anthony Joshua, right? The interesting thing about Anthony Joshua, the best fight that he ever fought was a fight that he lost. I need you guys to understand what I mean by that, right? The best fight that he ever fought was the one that he lost. Do you know what fight that is? The best fight that he fought but lost. You know which fight that is? He says he was 183 against Fury. So there you go, right? Um, that was probably one of Jake's best performances also. And that's the theme that I'm trying to get at with you guys here is look at the losses that they had, even though they lost in that fight. You can look at and say, you know what, they did really good there. They did good here. But if he was with someone else, oh boy, this would look really bad. This would look really bad if they were going up against someone else, right? That's sort of what is going on here. Uh, in the Alexander Usyk fight, the fight that I told you, where Anthony Joshua fought his best but still lost, right? That is what I'm talking about right there. He says, Zubair says Usyk. Yes, that was the best fight that Anthony Joshua had ever fought was against Alexander Usyk. And let me tell you why. The reason why, the reason why that was his best fight ever was because he was technically on point. He was uh, very fundamental with his boxing skills, right? What else? He had great defense behind him. He says, yeah, number two, the number two fight, yes, yes, the rematch. That was the best fight that he did, and you know what? That is the reason why Anthony Joshua was so angry. Right after that fight happened, he was so angry. The reason why he was angry was because he really put his whole entire effort into that fight, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. So yeah, it is the second fight that I'm talking about right there is Anthony Joshua's best performance of all time. Best performance of all time. Okay? But he lost. And he lost to somebody that was literally an all-time great. So there you have it. That's the reality of that situation. Right? He lost to somebody that was an all-time great, and now you can't really fault him for that in terms of him fighting other people. Now, what about Daniel Dubois? Well, here's Daniel Dubois, right? He knocks out Anthony Joshua. Yes, he lays him out cold, okay? And that's probably because of technical mishaps that uh, Anthony Joshua did. For example, he had the little shoulder roll that Mayweather does, right? A lot of dudes think they can do the shoulder roll. There's more to it than the shoulder roll. Okay, there's more to it than just putting your chin in your shoulder like this, expecting somebody not to hit you. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with that. That's what a lot of people don't understand. He says, I feel like Joshua will kill Jake Paul. BU, or a lot of people are saying it's rigged. It's not rigged at all. It's not rigged to any capacity. Look, here's the reason why a lot of people say that it's rigged, right? Anthony Joshua said it best at the podcast that he did. Anthony Joshua did a podcast with the Ring magazine. I forgot the dude's name. Some Italian-looking dude that's like dressed in all this Italian Versace designers, right? I forgot his name. He's got glasses on. He looks like a mafia guy, and he was the host of the podcast with him and Eddie Hearn. It was hosted by The Ring. Anthony Joshua said in that podcast, what did he say in that podcast? He said that a lot of people think Jake Paul's fights are rigged because they can't believe that he beat the Anderson Silvas of the world. They can't believe that he beat the Tyron Woodleys of the world. And they can't believe that he beat all of these people that they feel Jake Paul should not have been beaten. Now, look, there's a reason why a lot of people don't like Jake Paul. Ernie, shout out to you, my man. He says, people don't understand the difference between exhibition and sanctioned fights. You know what? I really want to emphasize that, right? Because that is so true. People don't understand the difference between a sanctioned fight and an exhibition fight. Okay, so here's something I got to tell you about that, right? Here's the reality of this situation, right? Let me step in to something a little quieter because it's getting a little loud here. Okay, he says, right, which ones were exhibitions? Yeah, look, out of all those, oh, hold up, what is? Look at this. Look at this for a second. Look at this. Soccer with a bike. You know how hard that is to do? Okay, so all right. Uh okay, so going back to what Ernie said here, right? He says people don't understand the difference between exhibition and a sanctioned fight. So the Mike Tyson fight that Jake had, right? That was an exhibition. It was a clear exhibition. And you want to know what's indicative of that is if you go on the betting lines, right? If you try to bet for that fight, at the time, you weren't able to do it. So that's an indication. That is a clear indication that there is no foolery going on with that, right? With this fight, you can bet. Right now, you can go to William Hill. You could go to, I don't know what other gambling sites there are out there other than William Hill. Let's see, there's William Hill, there's PowerPoint. I don't even know if that's what it's called. PowerPoint or something, Power something, right? Power, we're going to screw you out of your money type of deal. But yes, you can bet on these fights. So that's how you know it's real. Look, man, the FBI, okay, under the Cash Patel regime, went after the NBA, they went after the UFC. So that should tell you there is no rigging going on with this. And you know what, man? Let me tell you, the FBI would love nothing better to do than to, snatch up Jake Paul. A lot of you don't know this dude was under federal investigation for running guns out of his mansion in LA, right? If you look at the news clip of him doing that, this is a reality. So, if he has that type of rap sheet, wouldn't you think that the feds would somehow go after the fact that, oh, it's rigged or this and that? Bro, listen, most people that say this fight is rigged, usually they don't really know or understand fighting. They don't really understand fighting. Most of you that are saying that don't understand fighting, and to be quite frank with you, uh, a lot of you that are saying these fights are rigged also don't understand what it takes to get in there. You see, what Jake Paul is doing is really no different than what I've seen fighters do across the United States and across the world when it comes to perfecting their craft, right? Getting better every day. There's no magic trick to any of this, right? There's no, I mean, yeah, you can say steroids or whatever, but steroids is one thing, but even that doesn't, really, it doesn't really, it doesn't really propel you to, have the fundamental skills that you need to, fight at a certain level. Let's see, what did he say here? He says hardly any of them. Um, Ernie says Anthony Joshua's active legacy isn't for sale. Respect for Jake for having an end game of a respectable fight. What do you mean by that, Ernie? He says Anthony Joshua's active legacy isn't for sale. Oh, okay. So you're saying that you also doubt the notion that that he's part of the rig too. Yeah, bro. Listen, do you honestly think Anthony Joshua is the type of guy to just purposely lay down for someone like that, right? That's I don't think that's the case, man. You have to really look at the characteristics of these people, right? And I appreciate that you say that, right? Zubaira says 50 million he would 50, but even that, but that's man, you listen, that's illegal, bro. You know what I mean? Even if he had that, thought in his mind, it's illegal to rig fights. See, this is what I mean, guys. Like a lot of people don't understand that don't understand what an exhibition or a sanctioned fight is, right? An exhibition is like, okay, what Floyd and Logan did, that's an exhibition. That's a clear exhibition. There were because here's what's indicative of that. You could not have bet on that fight. Now look, I'm not a gambling man, right? That's not my thing. This is not the channel for gambling MMA or gambling boxing or anything like that. I just break down the fights and talk to you guys about it. But when it comes to odds and it comes to like, oh, you got to get the parlays or this and that, I don't do none of that, right? You'd probably have to go to Zane for something like that. But he says, yeah, not life changing wealth for him. That's what I'm saying, right? So even if they were to pay him 50 million, they already paid him 50 million to win against Vladimir Klitschko, to fight Alexander Usyk, even though he's lost both of them twice. What else other big fights that Anthony Joshua's had? How about uh, well, the Dylan White fight? That was when he was fighting for a British title. Um, Andy Ruiz. There's who else was a Carlos Takam was a good fight. And, yeah, both the Andy Ruiz fights were good, even the ones that he had lost. So, um, what did he say here? He says, "Nah, boxing blew up when the Saudis came." Yeah, yeah, they definitely did, man. Look, look. Here's the thing, right? What made the Saudis basically the king of boxing right now was that they were willing to basically pork up any money that they needed, no pun intended, obviously, but they were willing to pork up any money they needed in order to get these fights going. And then we found out who the cowards were, right? Or the people that were just protecting their record. Because in 2010s, right, even back in the 90s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s and whatnot, what was the most prevalent problem in boxing in terms of getting these fights done? Oh, well, this guy's not paying this much or this and that. What stopped Manny Pacquiao and Floyd from fighting in 2012 as opposed to waiting years later in 2015? And then even way before that, they were trying to get that fight cracking 2009, right? And they weren't able to. Um, so what was it? It was the money. So then these guys came in and they're like, all right, you know what? Listen, they had all the money in the world. They recognized the talent that these people have. Because here's the thing about Turkey El Sheikh, right? The guy knows and understands his boxing. You know what I mean? Now, what's indicative of that? When they asked him, hey, what were some of your favorite fights, or what was some of your favorite boxing matches growing up, or your favorite fighters that you looked up to, right? He said something to the extent of Ken Norton. Now, look, you ask a casual, right, who's your favorite boxer, right? They'll say the most common names like Floyd. That's a common name. Muhammad Ali, the most common name of them all, right? This is what. But if you ask a person that really knows boxing, they'll tell you names like, well, I kind of like Dylan White, I kind of like Callum Smith, and then he mentioned Ken Norton, right, which is very niche, right? So you're talking about a dude who's a multi-billionaire that understands the sport and understands the worth of these people. So yeah, man, they definitely changed the game in that, right? But at the same time, though, um, no, I'd rather not speak on that because I was going to say other things. Because look, put it like this, right? This is the best way to put it. Every country in the world uses a sport in order to promote their um, promote tourism, right? This is what you see with the UFC and Abu Dhabi. Every time they have a UFC event in Abu Dhabi, what comes up on the screen? They're like, "Hey, come visit Abu Dhabi. It's beautiful. It's safe. It's clean. You're not, yeah, yeah." And for the most part, they're right about that, right? It's one of the safest countries in the world, right? Far more safer than the average American city. Um, what did my man here say? AJ Judoka. Okay, AJ Judoka says Ryan Garcia boxing mostly and Floyd Mayweather fights most growth in USA. Okay, you're going to have to expand your grammar on that one. Let me try and understand what you're saying here. Ryan Garcia boxing mostly. Ryan Garcia boxing mostly, and Floyd Mayweather fights most growth in USA. Okay, from what I'm trying to decipher out of that, are you trying to say that people like Ryan Garcia or Mayweather made their money in the United States as opposed to these new boxers that are getting their money with the Saudis? Let me know if that's what you mean or if that's the message you're trying to convey. Khan says, why did Tyson come back to fight uh, Paul for money? Why did Tyson come? Oh, you're talking about Mike Tyson, not Tyson Fury. Okay. Why did Tyson come back to fight Jake Paul for money? Joshua's no different. If he loses or draws some shit, I won't be surprised. Yeah, look, you guys are talking about this like Anthony Joshua is just going to come in here and lay down for Jake Paul. Listen, man, Anthony Joshua doesn't lay down for anybody. He's not the kind of guy. All right, put it like this. Let's talk about a former opponent of Jake, right? Nate Diaz, right? Stockton's own Nate Diaz. Do you honestly think Nate Diaz would literally cuck himself to just get beat up by Jake Paul, right? I mean, you look at the fight; he lost by points, but he didn't get knocked out. He gave Jake a pretty good fight. He actually rocked Jake a few times in that fight. He was trying to win that fight, but the fact remains is that Jake is just a much more technical boxer between them, and that's indicative of the years that Nate Diaz has put into jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts, whereas with Jake Paul, he spent literally almost a half decade at this point right now perfecting himself in boxing. And then prior to that, he had an athletic ability. So what does that tell you? That tells you that if you have any swarm of athletic ability and you jump into combat sports, it can yeah, you can absolutely make yourself into an elite fighter if you have the time, the resources, and the right trainers to go along with everything. So, uh, Zubaira here says, okay, Ernie says here, Joshua's still in the title picture. Yeah, so you know what? You are right, right? He is still in a title picture. So what does that mean if Jake knocks him out today, right? That means Jake will not only be in the title picture for both the cruiserweight division, but also the heavyweight division, right? Because Jake, for a long time, has talked about how he wanted to fight. I believe he's trying to fight Usyk in MMA, which makes sense, right? It makes sense because Usyk has already accomplished everything that he wanted to do in boxing, right? He's Ukrainian, so that means he's got a wrestling background like they all do, which means that he can easily transition to MMA if he wanted, right? But that's really all dependent upon just how good, let's say, his wrestling skills are. Um, okay, he doesn't want to fight Jake in boxing, right? But he said that he's willing to fight him in MMA. Well, why is that? I think because Usyk is what you would call a purist or a pugilist in boxing, right? He doesn't want to have the sport disrespected in any kind of way, but at the same time, he wants to put his paws on Jake Paul, so he'd rather do it with both of them debuting in MMA, right? So I think that's the logic behind why he would do it. But now, if he was to knock out Anthony Joshua today, man, they could go in there in the ring in the boxing rule setting and go for a title fight. Uh, Zubaira says Zuhaib says, Nate's was legit. Yeah, the Nate fight was legit. So, Judo says if Mike Tyson beats up Floyd in the upcoming event, a 2026, definitely Jake Paul match is fake. Yeah, the Floyd and the Mike Tyson fight, which I believe is set to take place in March. That is an exhibition. That is a definition of an exhibition. Look, I urge you to look at all the gambling websites, right? William Hill or whatever type of gambling entities are out there, right? And look up Floyd versus Mike Tyson. You're not going to see it because you can't bet on it because it's an exhibition because there's going to be no winners. And then yeah, that's really what it is. So look, before you guys talk about uh, fixing fights or fake fights or this and that. This is what man, you people need to learn the federal law. You need to learn federal law. You know what I mean? That's man, that is so highly illegal. You know what I mean? And I doubt Jake or Anthony Joshua would go out of their way to commit a crime like that when they could just easily go in there and just do what they naturally do best, which is go in there and try to take someone's head off, right? That's highly illegal to do that. You got to understand federal law. And look, you got to look at all these things that Cash Patel and the FBI are doing right now. That is not by coincidence. So don't you think that they would do the same thing to them? That they would roll up in Miami right now with their whole entire SWAT team and say, "All right, listen, we got to cancel this whole entire fight because it's rigged." But none of that is going on. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Cash Patel pulls up there, right, in his government tax-paying, uh, tax-paid jet, and roll down to Miami and sit front row for the fight. Just to kind of monitor and make sure, let's make sure there's no foolery going on here. Ernie says that is brave at the age to be will. Man, you guys got to work on your grammar, man. You know what I mean? Like this is it's very difficult reading this with your grammar. Okay, so that is brave at the age to be will to defend a young man's wrestling. Okay, Ernie says, I think Harlem Globetrotters. You can't bet on those games either. Okay, there you go. I'm going to highlight that comment right there, okay? Because that's the whole point that I'm trying to make. Okay, what did my man here say? He says, "Think Harlem Globetrotters. You can't bet on your games either." Yeah, because you don't even know who they're playing. They're playing like, uh, the Mississippi Pimps or some random name or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's the point that I'm trying to make. You can't bet on these games. You can't bet on professional wrestling. Um, Although I think you can, right? I think no, I don't think you can because even if you can bet on professional wrestling and say, hey, listen, John Cena is going to show up and become a bad guy or this and that. What are the odds of that? They probably would not have a bet on that either, right? Because there's people behind the scenes, there's writers in the WWE that know what is going on, so that would not be feasible to do that. He says, if Jake wins, it will ruin Christmas. Are you joking me, bro? Are you joking me? Ruin Christmas for who? For I mean for the people that bet against him, sure, yeah, that's gonna ruin because listen, bro. Listen, remember the first Andy Ruiz fight in New York, right? Do you remember how that went? Look, I don't think you guys understand, man. Anthony Joshua doesn't do very good when he fights in the United States. I don't know what it is. He says for Americans, for wait, victory. Let me get this straight, right? So if Jake wins, you said that it will ruin Christmas for Americans, but yet this American is fighting a British guy, right? So how would I see what you're saying though? Because probably a lot of people bet on Anthony Joshua, just like the first Andy Ruiz fight. Okay, it was his American debut. Never fought in the United States prior to that, right? And then all of a sudden, well, that fight originally was supposed to be with Jarrell Miller, right? And then Jarrell Miller pulled out because they found steroids on him, and so yeah, they couldn't put him in there. Uh, okay, now it's Andy Ruiz that's in there, right? They just thought, all right, you know what? Joshua's going to walk through this, chubby Mexican dude, and the next thing you know, the chubby Mexican dude is the heavyweight champion of the world, right? And then they rematched a couple of months later in Saudi Arabia. By the way, a place that is a lot more favorable towards Joshua, right? And lo and behold, they ended up on points. Zubaira says for uh, British and Scottish gas. Explain what you mean by that. Are you saying that the prices of gas will go up in the UK if Anthony Joshua loses? Oh man. Ernie says you can't bet professional wrestling, but the bets are very limited. It's more of a marketing ploy. Okay, I see that. Zubaira says Jake Paul is America's greatest fighter. Okay, now that's pushing it there. Maybe the most paid fighter. That may I don't necessarily think. Yeah, I wouldn't say that. He says get the garbage out of the sport. Um, well, all right. Here's the thing, right? What makes see see this is why I kind of have a different opinion on that, right? Like a lot of people say that he's bad for the sport, this and that, but to me, here's what I see out of this kid, right? He doesn't really do anything different than what most fighters around the world do. Okay, what is it that most fighters around the world do? They wake up in the morning, they train, and then they recover, and then they train again, and then recover, and then do it again the next day. What is he doing any different? The only thing that he's doing different is that he had all this YouTube money to buy nutritionists. By the way, the best nutritionist in the world, because his nutritionist happens to be a friend of mine, Eric Trilogy, right? That guy is the best nutritionist in the world. Okay, and he's got the best trainers in the world. He's training with Jay Leon Love, a former PBC boxer, training with his gym. These are serious boxing people, right? So he says, read my last comment before I said, get the garbage out. Okay. Uh, oh, okay. Did you hear all the gay jokes he's been making? And he posted a picture of him kissing Joshua at the face off. Yeah, bro. I mean, listen, Marty, you and I have had this conversation, right? Jake making gay jokes. I mean, look, there's only one group of people in the world, okay, straight males that make gay jokes or make jokes about being gay while straight. There's only one group of guys in the world that do that, and I can't say that out loud because obviously this is YouTube and you can't just say what you want. But yeah, he says an AI picture of him. Yeah, man, what is up with all these AI pictures of people, doing, like kissing and this and that? When Dylan Dennis got jumped at New York, he was showing a picture of Ali Abdelaziz and Islam kissing each other, right? Which, obviously is a big haram. And, it's no wonder why, the Dagestanis jumped him. And then here comes, Mayor Eric Adams, as soon as he's about to exit out of office, right? He's saying, "Yeah, we're going to investigate these fighters, and we're going to make sure that the law comes after them." I'm like, man, shut your ass up. Eric Adams talking about he's going to investigate the people that were in. I mean, go fight real crimes in New York, man. You know what I mean? Instead of like, getting at MMA fighters that are brawling at an event, which is completely irrelevant to the safety of New York City. But yeah, yeah, that was a weird one, man. That was a weird one. But look, man, what a lot of people need to understand is that what Jake does, is absolutely no different than what anybody else does it. The only reason why, the only reason why it annoys a lot of people is because, let's be honest with this, right? He doesn't exactly market himself the way that George St. Pierre does, right? He doesn't market himself the same way that, Anthony Joshua, right? This is a clear example of this, right? Anthony Joshua reminds me of a polished, media trained American athlete, and then also one of these Premier League soccer guys, right? If you ever see them on a media scrum or a press conference, they always know the right things to say. They don't really say anything, out of the just out of character, right? It's just everything about them is just politically correct. But there was a side of Anthony Joshua that I saw that I think you people are starting to see now. You know what he said, at the weigh-ins, right? He said, "Listen, if he dies, he dies," on some Ivan Drago shit, right? That's literally what he said. Uh, that's literally what he said. He said he doesn't care if he dies in this fight. And you know what? A lot of people were shocked by that. They're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe Anthony Joshua said that." I can. You want to know about Anthony Joshua? You know where he grew up at? He grew up in Watford, right? It's like, I'm not going to say it's like Compton or Stockton or anything like that, but it is right up there, right? Just the British version of it, right? He grew up around all of that. He grew up around drillers. He grew up around dudes that were slingers. He grew up around dudes that were gang banging. No different than anybody that grew up here in California. Experienced that stuff, right? That's the type of world he grew up in. And I saw this when he was walking at this college in London, right? He was walking around a college campus in London, and these stupid kids, came up to him and they said something, yelled at him at a balcony. Guess what Anthony Joshua did when he got yelled at from the balcony? He walked up to the apartment, knocked at their door, and said, "Hey, I'm the landlord." You know that little landlord bid that Anthony Joshua does all the time, right? He walks up there, talks to them, and he says, "Listen, bro. Okay, I'm gonna try to pull out my my hood British accent on this one. Listen, bruv, you know me. I'm not like what you think or what you see in the media, yeah? You know what I mean? I really legitimately fuck you up, yeah? I really fuck you up good, yeah? Don't be thinking I'm one of these, media hype trains or whatever. I know exactly what he means by that when he was using those vernaculars. And it goes something like this. He's saying, listen, just because I market myself as a nice guy, as a marketable guy, as a guy that's friendly to kids, as a friendly to elderly, is friendly to everyone, and this, that, and the other, take pictures with everyone. It doesn't mean that I won't f you up. Like that's literally the message. That's literally the message that he was trying to say. Uh, Zub Khan says, Moises Otama thoughts. I think he'll be the future of the heavyweight division, right? He's I think right now 20, right? So he's very close to fulfilling that championship, that world championship at a very young age. So he says, I like Joshua. He's a good dude. Yeah, yeah. He, you know what? Here's one thing I don't like. The only thing that I will say I don't like about Anthony Joshua, and at the same time I kind of get it, right? A lot of people don't know Anthony Joshua is Muslim, right? They don't know that he's Muslim, and there's a good reason why. Because he doesn't want to, put his faith out there, right? He's one of those type of guys, and I think it's also part of his marketing strategy. But also, let's be honest, right? Let's just be real about it. The British, the non-Muslim British, are not exactly fond of Muslims. Period. Right? I mean, generally speaking, not if you're, an individual that may feel a different sentiment, but that's the reality of it. So he wants to play that whole thing where, I'm a media marketing, I'm a media guy that's marketable, inclusive type of, way that he wants to. He says, need to get him on the beer game, Kyrie. Oh, you mean Anthony Joshua? Yeah, yeah. You know what? This is what I so I think that by the time he retires, that's what he'll probably do, right? I think he'll probably be a lot more overt about it when he retires, but or maybe not. Maybe he'll just continue on with his media friendly approach and this and that. But I tell you what, him saying, that that I'm down to unalive someone, that should tell you, the type of mindset that Anthony Joshua has and what he's planning to do in this fight. You know, okay, look, I'll give you an official prediction for this fight right now, right? Obviously, uh, I said that uh, it was going to be Anthony Joshua, right? But the result is going to shock you. I'm going to go with a decision by Anthony Joshua. This is why. This is why, right? I think Jake is going to be very well prepared for this fight, but I also think he's going to run around in the ring. And now, what I mean by run around, I literally mean that. A lot of people say run around, but they don't necessarily mean actually running around, right? When people say running around and fighting, what they mean is when they're circling, right? When they're doing a circle, when they're moving their feet in a circle. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's literally going to run. And an example of this, do you guys remember the Stipe Miocic versus Overeem fight? If you remember, Overeem literally ran around the cage, like sprinted, ran, okay, like running, like running as if bullets are coming after you, type of thing. Victory says, how is Jake going to stop him from walking him down with a high guard, throwing ones and twos? Yeah, he's going to run around. That's what he's going to do. You know what? McGregor has done this also in the Nate Diaz fight, the second Nate Diaz fight, if you remember. He took a little bit of a because look, here's the thing, man. Nate is a cardio machine, right? So he took liberties to sort of took a break in that fight, which honestly, to be quite honest with you, it seems like probably a smart strategy if you think about it, right? You're in there with a triathlete in Nate Diaz, a guy who does like triathlons, right? Which means he's got serious stamina, right? And if you're not going to knock him out, you're going to be in for a long fight. And yeah, that's exactly what McGregor did. He ran around. So expect to see that. Expect to see Jake to do that at some point in the fight or a good vast majority of the fight. So in other words, he's going to run two ways. He's going to run literally, but then he's also going to run in a way where he's circling, around, moving his feet in a circle. Victory says he better have great cardio if he's going to stay on the bike the whole time. It's exhausting to constantly fight going backwards. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It is exhausting to constantly fight going backwards, right? But uh, I think he has no choice but to, fight exactly like that. Look, when I look at their height discrepancy, right? I've told you guys this. I've sparred guys that are around Anthony Joshua's size, right? But here's a difference, right? That's MMA sparring, and then that's just sparring, period. But also, they're not Anthony Joshua. They're not the physical specimen that Anthony Joshua is. So, although it's not impossible, okay, for a guy Jake's size to take on somebody who's 6'5", 6'6", it's still a harder task, especially when you're dealing with someone like Anthony Joshua. Ali Khan says, "Good to see you again. Good to see you again, my man. Thank you for tapping into the chat." So Victory says he really is going to have to run because the reach difference is so drastic. Yes, that's exactly what I was talking about, right? Because look, does Jake strike you as a Dominic Cruz or a TJ Dillashaw or a Prince Nassim type of fighter? Does he strike you as that? Like, does he strike you as somebody that will move around the ring like that? No, it was never part of his repertoire. Now, I could understand if that was part of his repertoire, but it's not, right? Um, so yeah, he definitely has to, cut him off in that kind of way. But look, if you have that kind of footwork, you can actually mitigate the reach discrepancy that they have going on. Anthony Joshua is also very slow. He's not like Tyson Fury, right? Now, listen, if this was Tyson Fury instead of Anthony Joshua, it would be a completely different ball game, right? Because Tyson Fury can stick and move and move around you and run circles around you. Joshua can't do that. Sometimes Joshua is very flat-footed. Victory says no, he doesn't, and he's definitely not shredded for this fight. He's been trying to gain weight, so I wonder just how good his cardio will be. Well, the weight gain is indicative of him trying to increase his knockout power and trying to translate it into that division. Look, um, Anthony Rumble Johnson, right before he died, he fought at 170 and then fought all the way as high up to heavyweight, right? Rumble Johnson had serious knockout power at 170. He had serious knockout power at 170, and then he was able to translate that moving up to uh, heavyweight, moving up to light heavyweight. He went through all the divisions from 170, right? He went from 170, and then he went to 185 pounds, and then he went to 205, and then he became a full blown heavyweight at the end of his career and at the end of his life, right? So yeah, that's all that I think that's all that it's for is that he's just trying to translate that power that he has into the heavyweight division. And you know what? Some guys don't slow down when they gain weight, right? But we'll see if he's one of those guys or not. And obviously, power is sort of what he's going for in this one. He says, yeah, valid point. I noticed in Joshua's highlights that he's often flat footed standing in front of guys. So here's the thing about Anthony Joshua, too, right? Anthony Joshua has OCD, has serious OCD, right? Like everything has to be tight, everything has to be perfect. You know who's an example of this, right? Dr. Dre, the the producer, Eminem's producer, 50 Cent's producer, that Dr. Dre, because I know there's another Dr. Dre in the East Coast, just so you guys are not mistaken, but I think the world knows of one Dr. Dre. Okay, You want to know why this guy produces albums all year round, right? For different people, does songs for Kendrick Lamar, The Game, 50 Cent, so on and so forth, and maybe other new artists. But he doesn't come out with an album for about every 10 years. He comes out with an album every 10 years. Why? Because Dr. Dre he has OCD. This is the reason why. He has OCD. He wants everything to be perfect. He wants everything to be meticulous. It has to be this or none at all type of guys, right? Well, Anthony Joshua is the same way, and it kind of translates in how he fights, right? Like he looks very unsure of himself sometimes, looks very uncertain. That's why a lot of people say that he's robotic. Meanwhile, here's Tyson Fury, right? The guy who gives absolutely no eps about anything. You know what I mean? He's loose. He's like just all over the place, right? And you can see that translate in his movement, right? Where he just moves from one side of the ring over the other, does a lot of unorthodox stuff. So that's Anthony Joshua in a nutshell. He is a perfectionist, and being that he's a perfectionist, it's hard for him to commit into any shots. Look, I'll tell you what, man. When I first started doing Muay Thai, I kind of had this problem as well, right? So my trainers would say, like during sparring, they would say, well, look, you got to commit to these shots, right? And look, here's the thing, right? He found out during the fight why I didn't want to, because look, here's the thing, I don't want to go out and hurt my sparring partners or anything like that, right? It wasn't necessarily because I was hesitant or this and that, but man, you put me in there in a sanctioned environment where, all right, now I can go in there and let loose and just be as violent as I can be, and be as as animalistic as I can be. I'm gonna go all out. F this dude. You know what I mean? He's not a sparring partner, training partner of mine. I'm not gonna have to see this guy the next day. I don't have to see this guy at all. I have no feelings or emotions towards this guy. I'm gonna go in and 187 this dude. I was gonna say the M word, but we're on YouTube. But yeah, that's what it is. But I think maybe that's probably the same reason why Anthony Joshua feels the need to say all these things that he's saying. Oh, I'm gonna go end this guy's life or this and that, because he knows that if he hesitates, even for a split second in his fight, there could be an upset, right? And he knows that. And this is like the worst type of upset there is. This isn't like losing to Eddie Ruiz or losing to Tyson Fury. You know, Ali Khan says, I have to go to Juma prayer. Shout out to you, my man. It is, what do you call it? It is, what time is it? Right here. It is 9:37 where I am at right now. So it's going to be 10 later on. It's going to be 10 in the next hour. And then, yeah. And then a couple hours for me till Juma. So, shout out to you, man. What part of the world are you from, by the way? I'm assuming you're probably from the East Coast. I'm assuming, but yeah. Victory says, I don't wish for Jake to get severely injured, but there would be nothing better than to see him do the stinky leg and crumble Houston. Okay, okay. So shout outs to everybody in Texas and the Midwest. Yeah, man. Everybody on the chat, let me know what part of the world you guys are from. Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you. Look, I don't wish to see him get hurt either. I don't wish to see him lose in this fight either. But look, either way, this is a very highly anticipated fight. Let's go into reasons why this is a very highly anticipated fight. Number one, Jake Paul is hated by everybody, right? And a lot of people think that he's a fraud. A lot of people think that he shouldn't be boxing. So seeing him get knocked out, that would be the pleasure to everyone's eyes, right? Especially against Anthony Joshua. Obviously, Anthony Joshua is coming off of that loss against Dubois. And you know what? What they were planning on doing after that loss, so they were going to have Anthony Joshua fight this American heavyweight, right? By the way, an unknown guy, right? I believe his name is Cassius something, right? Definitely not Cassius Clay, the former name of Muhammad Ali. But Cassius was going to fight Anthony Joshua, an unknown heavyweight, right? They were going to go 8 rounds, and Eddie Hearn's whole entire prerogative on that was, all right, we're going to get Anthony Joshua's hands wrapped just to make that walk and basically a tune-up fight, right? The definition of a tune-up fight in boxing. Lo and behold, this same guy is sparring with Jake Paul. Okay, Cassius, he's sparring with Jake Paul. And then they decided, hey, you know what? When Gervonta Tank Davis had to pull out of that fight, they called Anthony Joshua and said, hey, come in here, let's go do this. So Eddie Hearn says, you know what? This is actually quite a brilliant idea. Okay, this is quite a brilliant idea because not only are we going to get an easy fight, but we're going to get a fight of a massive magnitude of media attention around the world, right? So that was what he was going for right here. So yeah, listen, put that fool on timeout. I don't know who the fuck you talking to, bro. Like, put that fool on timeout. Who is this fool, man? Get this fool up out of here. Stay off the grid. Yeah, you better stay off the grid. If I, man, listen, I'll have people, come in here with, finding what server you're at. And next thing you know, I'll show up at your house, knocking at your door, like, hey, what's up, fool? Talking about, man, get out of here. He says, yeah, Marty says he's an Ohio boy, should be rooting for him. I just can't get on that train. He says, yeah, staying off the grid doesn't know you will beat his ass. Yeah, he has no. I mean, listen, that's perfectly fine. Most people, most people that I walk across would not know that I could do that. That's probably listen. That's look. Here's the thing, right? Most dudes that like violence, you should like that. You should like that people don't know that you can fuck shit up, right? You should like that. It's the bodybuilding dudes that don't train combat sports, right? They just build themselves up to look big. You ever notice the biggest guy or the most muscular guy in the room never gets into a fight? They just assume, oh wow, look at that dude, he's big. I wouldn't want to mess with him. That's what the world sees. To me, when I see a dude that's big and that has no martial arts experience whatsoever, I say to myself, this dude is a victim. This dude is a victim for me, straight up. You know what I mean? This dude is a victim because I know that he's going to be stiff. I know that he's going to be slow. I know that when we lock up for grappling exchanges, he's not going to be able to have the uh, he's not going to be able to have the lactic acid tolerance to even deal with the pressure of my wrestling or grappling, let alone the frantic strikes that I'm going to throw at him. He says muscle guys gas in 30 seconds, right? And the reason why they do is because they often expect a fight to look like, all right, you know what? This is what's going to happen. I'm this big, so I can knock you out. And as a result of me doing that, it's just going to take one punch. That's what they slowly rely on. They slowly rely on that. They slowly rely on reputation. That's what it is, right? So the dudes that look like they're Mr. Universe, or dudes that look like they would often bodybuild at like Muscle Beach down in Venice or this and that. That's what they often kind of go for, right? They walk in a club, they got the tight shirts on and this and that, they got their veins popping and this and that. And everybody's looking at this dude like, oh, wow, I wouldn't mess with that guy. Meanwhile, if you're a trained killer, you're looking at this dude like, man, I would maim this dude. This dude don't got no speed. This dude don't have the lactic acid tolerance to even deal with grappling exchanges, let alone have the mechanics to even strike with you, right? That's what you're thinking in your head, but to the average person are like, oh, I'm not going to mess with that guy. And here's the thing, right? It kind of reminds me of a lot of gangster dudes on the streets that were never really tested. Oftentimes, a lot of the most gangster dudes that you see, that you hear about in the streets, they're not getting tested as often as you think they would, right? Like, for example, okay, they build up a reputation, because they did stuff, this and that, they're known for this, they're known for that, whoop de woo or whatever, but then years go by, they're not really the same person. They don't really have that type of physicality. Maybe sometimes they don't even, have that same violent streak anymore, right? So then you start thinking like, oh man, I'm not going to mess with this guy. But for the person that commits acts of violence on a daily basis, i.e., they're ops or people that are the opposition of them, they're looking at this guy like, man, you know what, I could hit this dude up, and so that's kind of the same similarities that you see with yeah, these types of dudes, you know what I mean, the type of dudes that that nobody would mess with because they look like Debo, but in reality, they're just, yeah, you know. Victory here says, we got one in the gym every month or so. They come in a few times, then you never see them again. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That I know exactly what you mean by that. I had this one dude, right? I had this one dude who was I believe he was a friend of my girlfriend's friend, right? Or wife, whatever. But uh, okay, so I remember one time, he's one of these, muscle knuckleheads or whatever, right? He says, yeah, hey man, I want to come spar with you. Never had, martial arts training in his life or this and that, right? So, I got, mats and what do you call it, gloves in my house, right? So I was like, all right, fool, let's glove up then, let's glove up. So we glove up. Guess what happens? And not only do we glove up, okay, we got the shin pads on. Okay, I even had him put on like like the, those things that Taekwondo people have, right? The body thing. I kind of use it for my son if he wants to hit or whatever. I kind of wear it for him to hit on it, right? So I made him wear that, right? I was literally all I had was just the boxing gloves and then the shin pads, right? But he was fully padded up and everything, and with good reason because I was really going to put a number on him. I said, listen, if you want to do this, I want you to wear everything, right? Because he wanted to know what it felt like. So let me tell you, man, he never wanted to train after that, right? I don't want to get into details of what happened. Okay, well, all right, let's get into details, right? First thing, right? Round one, ding ding. I go for a leg kick. Freaking, I'm like really went for it. Like I'm talking, prime Jose Aldo type of twerk behind it, right? So I put a lot of effort into it. Boom. Next thing you know, he like buckles. Now he's down on the floor. Now he's down on the floor. Guess what? I throw a little uppercut right there. By the way, not on the side of the head, the side of the helmet that has no covering whatsoever, right? So the boom, and then all right, you want to continue? He's like, yeah, yeah. So all right, so we continued on, and then I played with him for a little bit, took him down, just try to, basically uh, just basically try to try out different MMA skills, right? So took him down, got on a stat guard position, punched him a few times, just love taps. But a few of them, were like serious, like letting him know, like, listen, you can't compete in my world, bro. You know what I mean? Like, like listen, you're just all for looks and I'm for performance. There's a difference between you and me. So that was that. And then next thing his girlfriend comes into the garage and he's like, honey, what are you guys doing? I was like, oh, you this and that. Oh my God, you're bleeding or this, that, and the other. And so that's that, man. Yeah, I don't think he's ever really, trained martial arts after since then. I have talked to him a few times, and that's what he told me. He never did, and that's just what it is. Like these dudes, look, this is what I'm telling you, man. These dudes, I would rather be the dude that doesn't look the part, than actually because, dude, if you really are all about violence, bro, you don't want people to know that that you can do that, or if you just like to scare people, thinking that you're tough and you're hard, then yeah, by all means, do that. Look like go look like Hulk Hogan or whatever, right? While nobody ever tests you, but for me, it's not a matter of hate. It's not a matter of this and that. Like, like I welcome it. Like if a dude, in any random, place in the world is like, hey, listen, I think I could take you on a street fight right now. I was like, all right, fool, let's run it. So that's what it is. You know what I mean? Like, but that again, a lot of these guys have never been tested because they just look like the big man in the room that nobody wants to mess with. And that's that. Everybody looks like a Debo until Debo gets knocked out by Craig in Friday, right? As an example of that. But yeah, man, that's really it. Listen, that's all that I have for this hour right now, guys. Listen, don't forget to like and subscribe. I might go live later once I get home for the fights. I might go live for that one as well. So stay tuned. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one, inshallah.